Theory of Autonomy and Independence, Theories of Autonomy and Independence. These contributions come mainly from the late 1960s and early 1970s, and the major representatives are Rudolf Manfred Delling, Germany, Charles Wiedemeyer, USA, and Michael G. Moore, USA. A helping organization, the function is to take over upon the wish of learners for autonomy and independence. When autonomy and independence are achieved, the only left for the helping organization is to be the provider of information, documentation, and library facilities. In 1978, Delling lists 8 dimensions since he always believes that distance education has a multidimensional system of learning and communication processes. A learner, society, including legislation, administration, family, etc., a helping organization, distance teaching institutions, a learning objective, the content to be learned, the result of learning, distance, a signal carrier, concept of communications, monologues, one-way communication, books, newspaper, journals, documentary films, lectures without discussion, broadcast, self-teaching courses, and other self-instructional material. Dialogic, two-way communication, normal classroom or school teaching, conversations, letters with answers, and distance education courses. Independent learning is that learning, that changed behavior, that results from activities carried on by the learners in space and time, learners whose environment is different from that of the school, learners who may be guided by teachers but who are not dependent upon them, learners who accept degrees of freedom and responsibility in initiating and carrying out the activities that lead to learning. Wiedemeyer 1973:73. 6 characteristics of distance or independent systems. According to Wiedemeyer, the student and teacher are separated. The normal processes of teaching and learning are carried on in writing or through some other medium. Teaching is individualized. Learning takes place through the student's activity. Learning is made convenient for the student in his own environment. The learner takes responsibility for his progress, with freedom to start and stop at any time and to pace himself. Wiedemeyer 1973-76. Teaching, learning situation, a teacher, learner or learners, a communication system or mode, something to be taught/learned. Wiedemeyer stated the following about the classroom box. If the communication system is given either because it is the only system available, think of Plato meeting learners in the groove of Academos, or is a cultural artifact acting as an imperative, then there are no options, and the communication must be face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball, ear-pan-to-ear-pan speech. Then, if a box is put around the 4 essential elements, we have a classroom. A teaching learning system that must work any place, any time, for one learner or many directly confronts the space-time elite barriers of the classroom model. In fact, however, distance has long been a problem in the classroom model. As classes became larger and lectures replaced the dialogue that Plato conducted, the integrity of the model was breached. Only the illusion of being effectively face-to-face remains, as distance within the box lengthens between teacher and learners and speech is amplified for ever more distant reception. The concept of distance involves more than physical distance. There is social distance, cultural distance, and what I have been calling physical distance for want of a better term. All of these are present where teaching and learning are carried on. Wiedemeyer 1978 page 13-14, 1981 page 38-40. However, to achieve a teaching-learning system that works any place, any time, for one learner or many, the classroom box must be restructured. Wiedemeyer recommended the following conceptualizations of freedom for learners in all dependent or distance programs. A. Learning should be self-pacing. The learner should be able to pace his studies, in accordance with his circumstances and needs. B. Learning should be individualized, and the learners should be free to follow any of several courses of learning. C. The learner should have freedom in selection of goals and activities. Wiedemeyer 1973 page 101. The concept of distance, according to Moore, teaching programs can be classified according to the distance between learner and teacher. He wants programs to be classified by the provision for two-way communication, dialogue for D, and by the extent to which a program can be responsive to a learner's individual needs, structure, or S. He believes that the element of two-way communication in all distance teaching programs can be measured, and suggests that an educational telephone network is an example of high two-way communication, or dialogue, D positive, and an educational radio broadcast is an example of a distance teaching methodology, in which two-way communication is not possible, D negative, and hence would not be counted as an example of distance education as defined. In a highly structured programs, S positive, no variation of the program is possible, as in a linear programmed instruction text, but when there is a minimum of structure, teachers and learners can respond easily to stimuli. Thus Moore feels that the extent of the responsiveness of a teaching program to a learner's individual needs, goals, progress, or achievements are important. The concept of autonomy, both Moore and Wiedemeyer sought for learner autonomy in the setting of objectives, methods of study, evaluation. The concept of distance between the teacher and learner must be clearly defined. The learner is compelled to have a high degree of accountability for the conduct of the learning program. With autonomy, the learner needs to exercise a greater degree of control over her learning. Adult learners may have different needs and level of autonomy, but Moore suggested that, to be able to measure the autonomy dimension of an educational programs, the following characteristics are relevant to the teaching learning process. A. Establishment or preparatory activities in which problems are identified, goals set, and strategies planned. B. Executive activities in which data, information and ideas are patterned, experiments and tests take place, in order to arrive at instructional solutions. C. Evaluators activities, in which the instructional processes make judgments about the appropriateness of the information and ideas for solving the problems and meeting goals. Moore 1977 B21. Classification of programs. Programs are classified, according to the extent in which the learner can exercise autonomy in learning by asking the three questions. A. Autonomy in setting of objectives. Is the selection of learning objectives in the program that of the learner or the teacher? B. Autonomy in methods of study. Is the selection and use of resource persons, of bodies, and other media the decision of the teacher or the learner? C. Autonomy in evaluation. Are the decisions about the method of evaluation and criteria to be used made by the learner or the teacher? By applying the questions, Moore created the table. A is learner determined, autonomous, and N is teacher determined, non-autonomous. An indication of the type of program Moore suggested the 8 categories. Private study, University of London external degree, learning sports skills, learning car driving, learner controls course, and evaluation, learner controls evaluation, many independent study course, independent study for credit. In the next table, notice the following: AAA, -D, -S, represents the most independent form of education, totally private study with no two-way communication, and completely unstructured with the learner, entirely autonomous in goals, methods, and evaluation, while type N and N, +D, -S, is the least independent, where autonomy and distance are very low, and the learner is completely controlled by the teacher. But as you noticed in the image, learners vary in extent to which they are able to exercise autonomy and distance, thus operationalizing the two terms is not yet clear as regards distance education. As valuable takeaway, according to Peters 1998, following Moore, they said that distance education consists fundamentally of the integration of instructive dialogues, structured learning and teaching programs and activities covered by autonomous learning, and describes dialogue, structure, and autonomy. He indicates there are two dimensions involved, a pedagogical dimension and a psychological dimension. Thank you for watching this video.